What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to Losers Round 2. I was playing against Renzo Navarro, who goes by Prro-T online. Fine player from Latin America. They were using a really cool team as well. A nice standard-looking team. Like, if you look at this, that just is a Series 9 team. Like, look at all those nice. You got a Lifeboat Landris, you got a Weakness Policy Moltres, you got a Regieleki, you got a Tapu Fini, you got an Incineroar. This is a Series 9 team. There's nothing here that's surprising. I had done a little bit of scouting on all of the players for Global Finals, so I knew a couple things about this team going in advance. I knew this Amoonguss was, in addition to holding its Focus Sash, was max speed, and I knew the Incineroar was faster than the Amoonguss. I didn't know really much else. In the regional qualifiers, Renzo had actually had an Araquanid instead of the Tapu Fini here. I don't know whether or not I would have preferred playing Tapu Fini versus Araquanid, but Tapu Fini is definitely a good Pokemon versus my team. This looks like a potential Blastoise matchup, but it also looks like very much like a Landorus matchup. Like Landorus versus Landorus here, this looks like basically it's going to be the same thing as what it has been in my other Players Cup games. It's going to be who gets their Landorus going first, and who is able to max Airstream their opponent more times. That tends to be how these go, and I don't expect really much to change. So this is going to be another nice neutral set, I think. Let's go ahead and get right into it. My opponent leads off with Regieleki and Amoonguss, as I lead off with my Spectrier and Regieleki. So pulling a page from Leonardo's book here from last round. I did use this lead every so often. And so turn one, I am going to Volt Switch the Amoonguss and Will-O-Wisp the Regieleki. I don't expect my opponent to... Or I Volt Switch and Will-O-Wisp the Regieleki. So what this does is it covers the Lander switching in that slot very effectively. The only way they can punish this play is by protecting with their Regieleki. And their biggest punish, they could also Spore me, but I don't think that's very likely given that I have Taunt. And you're pretty likely, I think, there to want to go for Taunt into my... I'm going to want to go for Taunt into the Amoonguss slot. My opponent gets a critical hit on the Electroweb into my Spectrier, which is not appreciated. Very rude, Regieleki. I am going to get half of Regieleki's HP down, though, with a Volt Switch. And at this point, I can either go into my Landorus or my Clefairy. My Landorus is looking a lot better, though. I'm going to be able to put Intimidate down on their Landorus. I'm going to be able to put up a Swords Dance if I want as well. I can do Landorus, then Swords Dance with my Lando and switch to Clefairy. I thought that was a pretty good play, because if they go for the Dynamax, they would deal some damage to me with a plus, or like a -1 Airstream, but it wouldn't be a super huge amount. And they also probably are inclined to hit the Spectrier, so going Lando is a decent play here. I am thinking about my options here, though. I want to make sure that I cover all potential plays. I'm trying to think far ahead because this seems to be a sort of pivoting game based on how my opponent even just played the turn one here. I time out because I know it's going to go into Landorus. It's not like random or anything. And so I can just use all my time to think rather than having to push buttons on the Pro Controller. That's what I use to play. But this is great. If I had Will-O-Wisp the Amoonguss slot there, I would have been like game ending. Like that might have actually ended the game. But I did not do that. Instead, I Will-O-Wisp the Regieleki, which is... The burn is pretty ineffectual, especially since because of that crit earlier. Volt Switch may knock out my Spectrier, but probably not very likely, but Thunderbolt will knock me out, so... I'm not inclined to give up my Spectrier quite yet. I'm much more like... I am feeling much better about switching and then going for the Swords Dance play, like I mentioned earlier. So... my opponent, if they want to stay in, they could go for the Swords Dance themselves. That would not be super ideal, but again, it doesn't make as much sense for them to go for Swords Dance, so they do switch out into Incineroar. So I get all of their Pokemon. They didn't bring Tapu Fini, which is really nice. And they also didn't bring Moltres, which is good for my Spectrier. But most importantly, they didn't bring the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini in combination with Landorus is, I think, one of the toughest ways for, one of the toughest things for my team. And knowing they brought double Intimidate is still not, great. But it's still good. I'm happy not to see the Tapu Fini. I would have been happier not to see the Amoonguss come in here on this Volt Switch. Because even though I got my nice Swords Dance up, I can't use it. I mean, I can, but if I go for a Follow Me, like they have the option of going for Fake Out and Spore because they're Focus Sash on Amoonguss. I can't do anything about that. I don't have any punishes for that. So I can either Sleep Sack my Lando, which doesn't really make much sense. Like I can go for Rock Slide into the Amoonguss and just try to flinch it. But I feel like that's kind of a dumb play. I mean, that really is a dumb play. But I expect them to go for Fake Out and Spore. And so I'm like, okay, this isn't good, but I can generate this situation later. I don't need to max with my Lando right now because I don't want to be put to sleep. Because like I said, I thought they had pretty easy Fake Out and Spore. They actually go for Flare Blitz though. So if I had gone for Follow Me and I had gone for an attack into the Amoonguss there, I would have been able to, quote, safely redirect the attack. But instead, they go for the Spore, which my Spectre safety call was able to take, and I sing the Amoonguss, which is really great. That means I'm going to be able to generate this sort of situation easily next time. The Incineroar is also kind of stuck on the field. If they want to stay in, that's fine, but they're going to be faster than my Clefairy, so they can't just switch out directly. If they do, then I'm going to, like if they switch into Lando, I'm going to switch into my Lando second and get the Intimidate advantage. So I'm just going to go for the Taunt into the Incineroar. That covers pretty much everything. If they want to Flare Blitz me, that's fine. That's going to do pretty low damage on both my Pokemon. My Clefairy has taken a lot of damage, which is bad, but I have put their Amoonguss to sleep, which is very good. It means the Amoonguss is going to be very ineffective on the field unless it takes turns to stay in to attempt to wake up. And turns that it stays in are turns that Landorus isn't coming in. So my opponent does not attempt to switch out their Amoonguss and doesn't switch out the Incineroar either. I'm hoping this is a parting shot, and it is a parting shot. So that parting shot is really great for me. So now what I've done is I've generated the same situation that I had before, but now the Amoonguss is sleeping. It's not very likely they're going to be able to put that Fake Out and Spore combination on the board again. I know they've got Regieleki and Lando in the back. This is looking good for me. I can handle this. My opponent does switch out their Amoonguss into the Regieleki, which is not great, of course. I did just taunt into that slot. If I had gone for the Shadow Ball, that would have been epic. But I wanted to respect the possibility of Amoonguss waking up there. Since it took its first turn of sleep, it did have a chance of waking up, and if it had Spored into my Lando, that would have been truly terrible. But my opponent, wisely realizing that the odds of that happening, especially through taunts, were pretty low, and instead just going for the Flare Blitz into my Spectre, which guarantees that my Spectre is in Volt Switch KO range. However, now I'm still in a great spot. I can go for another Sword Dance if I want to, or I can just go for Max Airstream. So the advantage of Max Airstream is it'll put me faster than their Lando straight away. It means I'll be able to hit them before they're able to hit me. I've still got all my Pokemon left. Granted, I only really have my Lando to hit their Lando, but it's looking okay. Especially if they go hard in the Lando here, I much appreciate them doing that. But no, they said go into Amoonguss. So my Spectre will be felled by the Regieleki's Electric type attack, assuming it did go for that. If it goes for Protect, that would be awesome, because then I would have a speed boost on my Spectre, and I'd be able to knock out the Regieleki. Actually, do I No, I don't even outspeed Regieleki at +1 with my Spectre. I don't think any Spectre can do that. Assuming they're timid, of course. I don't actually remember if I was calcing during the game if I figured out the Regieleki was timid or modest. I don't have anything in my... oh, I do have something in my notes that Regieleki was timid and not max special attack from my calcing I was doing mid-set, so... I don't actually know what it ended up being. The paste is public now, thanks to the rental codes being published, but yeah. Regardless, it doesn't really matter how much special attack Regieleki had. Even if it had a minus special attack nature, Volt Switch would be able to knock me out. But Max Airstream into the Amoonguss is going to do a ton of damage. And because that was a switched in Amoonguss, it doesn't have the chance of waking up this turn. So my Landorus is still sitting pretty. It's very pretty. Landorus, he's going to win some beauty contests out here, coming from the Hoenn region. He may be the tried and true, but he's certainly a contest master, or whatever the switch in text is for contest stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I go into my Regieleki. This still isn't great, though. I've already used one turn of Max Airstream, and I really, I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to hit the Landorus. I'm still going to be able to pick up knockouts on anything that I hit, but I may not be picking them up on the right ones. My opponent can just sack the Regieleki here. My Thunderbolt will be able to outspeed my Landorus. My Regieleki is faster than Landorus at +1, so I can go for Thunderbolt, knock out the Amoonguss, and then go for a Max Airstream into whatever switches in. That would knock out the Incineroar because I'm currently at +1 attack. I think I'm at +1, right? SD, Lando hasn't switched in. Incineroar switched in there, so I'm at +1 right now. Yeah, I'm at +1 right now. But anyway, Max Airstream is able to knock out the Regieleki. And so they're going to get 2 Intimidates down. And this is actually kind of bad. Because I still don't really have a way of beating this Landorus. If I go for Max Airstream into it, I would do, about a quarter of its health? Because Lando dies at full, so another Max Airstream. I'm going to be at -1, -2, one of the two. I'm not going to be doing very much damage to this Landorus. So I'm just going to attack the Incineroar because I don't really have anything better to do. But it's not a good thing that I don't have anything better to do. Although my Landorus was able to sweep through most of their Pokemon, I don't really think I can actually break through this Landorus at this point. This is going to be tough. I'm not sure what resources I have available to me because my Regieleki is kind of just stuck. It can do a lot of damage, but it can't do a lot of damage to the Landorus unless I trick it a ring target, but I'm fresh out of ring targets. So I've got to use my own Landorus in order to be able to take that damage straight. If I go for a Max Guard here to block their Max Airstream, fine, but it doesn't really get me anything. I'd much rather just put more damage down onto their Incineroar. Just take the knockout there. Thunderbolt isn't going to be able to knock out the Incineroar in one hit, so I need the extra damage in order to be able to pick up that knockout. Prevent it from going for more parting shots, things like that. And they don't go for the fake out into Regieleki, because at this point, again, they don't really care about Regieleki. They don't care if I stop their Thunderbolt into that slot because they're going to Max Airstream my Lando 100% of the time. Now my Lando is at +3. I don't know what the speed interaction between my Lando and Renzo's Lando is. Unlike versus Leonardo, where I was pretty confident that Renzo's was Jolly, and I ended up confirming it later on in Game 2, based on its speed interaction with my Regieleki. I don't know which of our Landorus are faster here, and I don't believe that damage roll told me anything either, because I think I checked. So now, I'm in a really tricky spot. My Regieleki can't do anything to them. I'm kind of like what happened in Game 1 versus Leonardo. I can either go for the Fly or I can go for Swords Dance. So if I go for Fly, then I will come down on the Lando. While it's still Dynamaxed, to be fair. But I will come down on the Lando. Like if it goes for Airstream here, I'll go for Fly. I'll dodge an Airstream. So I will have 3 Airstreams. They'll only have 2. I'll go for Fly into Lando. I can redirect the attack away with Clefairy next turn. This should be okay. They're not very inclined to want to attack my Regieleki here, or at least I thought, because Regieleki couldn't touch me. But they make a solid play, so I should have been bold like Leonardo and click Swords Dance. If I click Swords Dance there, then I can do the same thing to Renzo that Leonardo did to me. But now I can't do that. I don't have that play available to me. I now have to come down, and a crit Fly isn't going to knock out this Lando. It won't even come close. So this game's over. I can't do anything. Fly's gonna come down. Even if I get a critical hit, it's not gonna knock out the Landorus. And it's not gonna knock out the Landorus after Life Orb recoil either. So this game's over. There's nothing I can do. I don't have any desire as well for them to see that their Landorus at +1 speed. Well, I guess it'd be at +2 speed would outspeed my Regieleki. There's no more information I can get here. I don't learn anything more. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw in the towel. Fly into, like I said, fly into Lando doesn't. I don't get anything out of that. Like even if I get a critical hit. So, although I thought that game went really well. I think maybe if I had gone for the second Sword Stance on the turn where Incineroar and Regieleki were on the field, I think that maybe could have made a difference because in the end game, I would have had more attack on my Landorus and would have been able to pressure their Landorus a lot more. but that was kind of demoralizing. The fact that I thought I played really well there at the start of the game. I got Swords Dance set up. They pivoted to pressure me. I switched out. I was able to cover that play. I still lost. So that really sucked. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try switching things up. I'm going to bring Blastoise. Blastoise is okay. They didn't bring Tapu Fini, which is really good for Blastoise. I could actually max my Blastoise here. Blastoise is going to be able to knock out the Incineroar. It'll knock out the Regieleki and after the G-Max chip damage, and it'll do heavy damage to Landorus. So I'm like, okay, I think Spectrier can be the play. Spectrier could be fine. I'll bring Landorus as well because Landorus could be a potential alternative max. But I thought that my Blastoise could actually be the one to actually Dynamax this game. And I'm pretty committed to doing that. Regieleki in the back is also going to be good too. I want to bring Regieleki, even though they didn't bring either Moltres or Tapu Fini. I still need to cover that, especially with bringing my Blastoise. If I bring Blastoise and they bring Tapu Fini, it's not good for me. I have to max my Lando then. But bringing my Regieleki enables me to max my Blastoise more freely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to damage the Tapu Fini for any significant amount. But with this, I have pretty good odds, I think. My opponent leads with Regieleki and Incineroar. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I've got my Blastoise out. I could just go for the taunt and G-Max Cannonade turn 1, but that's so just in your face trying to do that, and I don't really strictly need to knock out either of these Pokemon right now when I've got my Landorus in the back. So I was debating here, like I say, just going for the taunt and G-Max Cannonade, because that would knock out Regieleki. It would force them to Volt Switch. If they can't, by taunting the Incineroar, I would stop them from going for Parting Shot, which would be really good. So I still want to do that, but I can switch it to my Landorus. And I'm pretty confident they want to go for this Parting Shot here. I think that makes a lot of sense for them to still go for Parting Shot, even though I caught them in Game 1 with it. By using Taunt, I can stop them from going for the Parting Shot and gaining momentum. So I'm thinking there's pretty likely they're going to go for an Electric-type attack into my Landorus, and that's going to be very, very positive for me. They do go for an Electric-type attack, but it's Electro Whip. Probably just trying to break my Wakan Berry. So I'm like, rats. I wish I had gone for the G-Max Cannonade there, because I would have dealt a lot of damage to them, and they would have dealt a lot of low damage back. But this is still good. My Landorus is in a very similar position as it was in Game 1. I'm going to be able to get a Sword Stance off, and I can go for Max Airstreams. But this time, I actually have a Pokemon that can threaten their Landorus in the late game. I've got my own Blastoise, so this feels a lot better than last time. Now, they did do a ton of damage to me with the Flare Blitz and Electro Web combination attack, which isn't great. I'm definitely not happy to see that, but it's also not the end of the world. Like I said, I'm going to be able to get this Swords Dance off with my Landorus. They may switch into their own Landorus, but then I'll have the Landorus attack advantage. They can switch into their own Incineroar, but it's going to take them time in order to reduce my attack down. And I feel like in that time period, I'm going to have a much bigger advantage than they are. So, by going for the Swords Dance, I feel like I'm setting myself up. I can potentially still max my Landorus, or I can max my Blastoise, depending on the board state that we find ourselves in. So my opponent switches in their Landorus. And my opponent is likely going to go for the Volt Switch with Regieleki. And that's, not great, but not anything that I can't handle. If they want to go into Incineroar, fine. They're going to completely negate my Intimidate stuff, but so what? If they go into their Amoonguss, fine. I feel like I can handle whatever they go for. And they go into Amoonguss, and I'm like, okay, that's still okay. They did bring the same Pokemon that they did in Game 1. I'm like, they didn't bring Tapu Fini. I could max my Blastoise here. I'm like, I think they're just going to switch out Landorus into Incineroar and protect Amoonguss. And then they're going to switch back their Incineroar. I don't think I can beat them. Based on how well they Intimidate shuffled me the last time, I don't think I can beat them by just trying to go for this. So I'm like, okay, Lando's going to switch out. I'm just going to go for the Rock Slide and deal heavy damage to whatever comes in. The Amoonguss is going to protect on whatever this max damage stream is. I'm not going to bother trying to play around this. I'm going to deal some damage to whatever comes in here. So the Amoonguss actually switches out to Incineroar. I'm like, oh, that means they're staying in with Lando. I'm like, well, shoot, I hope I flinched them with Rock Slide, since they're probably going for the Swords Dance here. Yeah, they're not going for the Swords Dance here. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, this was just such an oversight on my part. Not covering for this play is costly. There's really no other way of wording it. It's costly. Because if they go for this Dynamax Landorus, I don't have any protection. My Volt Switch here is going to get my Regieleki off the board, which is good versus the Lando, but what do I bring in? If I go into my Spectrier, and it gets KO'd, and I don't have Will-O-Wisp. If they hit my Lando, though, with Max Airstream, that's bad too, because then they outspeed my Spectrier on the next turn. And that's what they just go for. They go for Max Airstream into my Landorus. That's going to knock me out in one hit. Their Life Orb. They also outsped me, so I didn't get the Rock Slide chip damage on them either. This is bad. This is phenomenally bad. That probably does mean that they're Jolly on Landorus. Probably like Jolly max attack, but now I'm obligated to max with my Blastoise. But I can't win. How does Blastoise beat all their Pokemon at this point? I just don't see it happening. Like, I'm going to be able to deal super effective damage to these Pokemon, but they're not going to give me a chance. They're going to go for Parting Shot. Probably into Amoonguss. I'm like, okay. This is like... I remember I was thinking to myself, like, how can I win this game? Like what can I possibly do to win this game? They outspeed me. I remember I was thinking about going for... Yeah, I don't know why I went for Taunt here. I think I should have gone for Will-O-Wisp if I was going for Broke. I don't have anything better to do with my land. I think I was hard reading them going for Airstream Parting Shot. But even if I was reading that, if they go for Airstream into Blastoise, it's better to go for Will-O-Wisp into the Lando. Not like it matters, but Blastoise Gigantamaxing here. It looks cool. Gets to go on the thumbnail. But how is its effectiveness going to turn out? I'm not so sure about that. The Lando is just going to go for Max Quake, which is even worse for me. But they can afford to do that. They don't need to outspeed me anymore. They've already got a +1 speed boost on Incineroar. That's going to outspeed my Blastoise. And they'll be able to go for a Parting Shot. Even if they don't go for a Parting Shot, even if they go for like Taunt, trying to catch my Yawn. This is still so bad for me. Parting Shot into my Blastoise will lower its stats. And now I have to like, alright, I have to crit whatever comes in here. That has to go down, and then I have to crit something else. Like if a Amoonguss comes in here and I do get a critical hit on it, that would bring it down to its Focus Sash, and then I'd be able to knock it out with Hail Chip. And then maybe I can weave in a G-Max Cannonade onto the Regieleki at some point. But it'd be really, really hard to do. And you can see, at -1, that's just not going to do enough to Amoonguss. Blizzard would not have dealt enough damage in order for Amoonguss to survive that attack. Like, Blizzard wouldn't do enough in that position anyway. So I'm happy I had Ice Beam there in case I was out of max. But now again, what do? My Spectre is down. They have another free Max Quake into my Regieleki. They are only at +1 speed, though. So I'm like, okay. If they respect my option of going for like something like an Electro Web and Ice Beam into the Amoonguss, and they go for like Protect and then they hit my Blastoise for some reason, then maybe I can win this game. Like if I go for like if they hit my Blastoise here, maybe maybe I can do something. You can see like when your game plan is maybe we can do something, that's not good. At this point, my opponent also switches out to get more Regenerator on their Amoonguss, which is like fantastic for me. Like in case it wasn't bad enough. Yeah, I've got to crit my attack here. If I crit my attack, I can knock out the Landorus, and then even if that happens, I can't knock out the Amoonguss with Max Ice, so I have to crit that too. I have to crit all my moves. I should have given my Blastoise Scope Lens, but if I had given my Blastoise Scope Lens, then I would die to this Magnet Lucky's Thunderbolt. Like Blastoise just isn't gonna do enough here. You get to see the cool G-Max Cannonade. Wow. You get the blah with the water, but Lando is, yeah, this isn't looking good. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but again, I think after I lost my Lando like that, you have to ask again the question, how would I have won this game? Like, what would you have done to have won the game? I think your answer, if you are a good player, should be, you should not have done the play where you tried to rock slide Landorus. You should have gone for another sort. You should have gone for a max airstream yourself, and just tried to play the Intimidate game. But Renzo is able to play the Intimidate game way better than I can with double Intimidate. They go for Fake Out and Earthquake, which I thought was really funny. I mean, they can do whatever they want. Like, if I max guard there, it doesn't help me. Because I would avoid, 20 damage of Fake Out. And then I would be out of Dynamax, and the Landorus would still have an extra attack in it. So I get the Landorus as well. Even if I get a bunch of successive protects in a row, it's also not going to be enough. That's going to have been the second turn of G-Max Cannonade. So at most, I will have what? That's 1, 2, 3 turns of Hail. I will have one more turn of Hail, because the turn Hail ends, I don't deal any damage. So I would have 1 turn of Hail and 2 turns of G-Max Cannonade. That's not enough for me able to knock out Regieleki with successive protects. So there's not even any point in trying for successive protects. All I'll be doing is guaranteeing my Blastoise is in KO range at that point myself. I'm like, all right, they need to like protect Amoonguss and they need to go for like Electroweb Spore or something and miss Electroweb, and I need to Ice Beam freeze them. Surprisingly, my opponent goes for the 100% safe Rage Powder Thunderbolt. And is able to knock out my Blastoise. So, a well-played game there from Renzo. Unlike in my match versus Leonardo, that wasn't a read. I don't think Prro-T hard read me doing that. I think that was me making a misplay. I think they capitalized really well on it. That was a good set of Pokemon there. Like, I can't complain. I never got unlucky. I mean, I hit my Sing on Clefairy. What more can you ask for? My opponent just played really well. And lo and behold, an opponent that played really well ends up going on and winning the whole thing. I can John a little bit, saying that I happen to have played the 2 players who got first and second so early in the tournament. But doing so is, I think, really lame and doesn't get you anywhere. If you want to be the best player in a tournament, you have to beat the other best players in the tournament. I think I had a really good shot versus Leonardo, but versus Renzo, like, I thought that was I thought he just played better than me. Like, he just outplayed me, and that's a good way to go out, at least. It wasn't because my opponent got lucky. It wasn't because of some critical turns. They just played better than me. I don't think it was a matchup issue either. I know Leonardo, he had commented that he thought his matchup versus Renzo was poor. I don't think this matchup is bad at all. I think it's just a Landorus matchup, and you've got to out-Landorus your opponent. And you have plenty of tools to be able to do so. But I thought that Renzo just played super well. And that's going to be it. That's my run. I'm out at 9th place. At least I'm out early, which is good. But I got $500 from it, so woohoo! Yeah, that's pretty good. And I have the pleasure of having played at one of the global finals for Players Cup, which only a few other players throughout this past year of the pandemic have had the opportunity to do. So I'm quite fortunate in that regard. If you've watched all my videos on Players Cup 4, first of all, you should probably be watching other players too. I don't know if I offered that much insightful commentary. Don't forget that I went 0-2 in Players Cup 3, so my success is pretty volatile and should be taken not as seriously as someone with much more experience and who is a lot better at the game than I am. But I hope that minimally I was able to offer some insightful commentary, at least as to what my thought process was throughout the tournament alongside my games. I'm hoping also that this will serve very usefully as a record should I decide to go back and watch and review my games to have a better idea of what I was thinking of at the time. And hopefully, by reflecting on these games, I'm able to learn from my mistakes and improve as a player, because that's ultimately why I record these things. I kind of like doing it for YouTube, but I also like doing it for me. Reviewing my own sets is helpful for me to be able to grow as a player, and that's something I always encourage players who are getting started with the game to do. Review your sets, especially your losses. Your losses are way more important than your wins. And these were 2 important losses that I hope to learn a lot from. So, again, thank you for watching. Until next time, have a good one.